Good, good. Okay, everyone have their microphones on. We'll get going. I mean, it's 5:29, but
That was workshop night.
still says 5:29 at my phone.
Oh, okay. We're just all staring at you.
Okay.
Don't feel any
Yeah.
uncomfortableness.
I don't. Okay, it's 5:30. I will call the meeting to order and ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would entertain a motion to approve the June 23rd, 2025 monthly workshop agenda as presented.
So moved.
Support.
Any conversation? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, show of hands, please. Thank you. 6 yeses and no Eric tonight, so. Okay, we are at the first opportunity for any citizens or delegations who would like to address the board. I will just remind you that according to Board Policy 0167.3, public participation at board meetings, individuals addressing the board are asked to state their name, address, and/or your group affiliation, shall direct all comments to the board, not staff or other participants, shall not make personal attacks against a school board member or school district employee by name, shall be limited to 3 minutes duration, and shall not speak more than once on the same topic unless all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. This portion of the meeting shall be limited to 30 minutes, but the time frame will be extended if necessary so that no one's rights to address the board will be denied. I'm not going to rush anybody along, but I'm not seeing anyone coming forward, so I will move along to our discussion items. Up first, we have legal representation from...
Yeah, so at the request of the board, Troon is here to just share a bit about what they do for the district and answer any questions from the board about legal representation. So if you want to come on up, I'll introduce, Chris Imoreno, correct? President of Troon, Jessica McNamara, an attorney with Troon, and Katie Broaddus, who you all probably know fairly well, but an attorney with Troon as well. So I will turn it over to you.
Great. Good evening, and thank you very much. Christopher I. Moreno with Troon Law Firm. Been with Troon for just now 30 years at the end of May. Practice primarily in the public finance, elections, and construction areas. I am president of the firm and happy to be here this evening. To the extent that we want to talk about legal representation, all three of us are here ready to answer any questions or enter into any discussion that you might have. Would just suggest that if we get into specific advice that either has been given in the past or is ongoing, we want to be a little cautious on that, because if the board dives into actual attorney-client privileged information in an open session, it basically obviates the attorney-client privilege. So you might not want to do that. If we really want to dive into something specific on advice that has been given, there's the opportunity, of course, to go into closed session. But otherwise, if we keep it more at that kind of general level, it might be a good approach. So having introduced myself, I'm going to let each of my colleagues introduce themselves as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Jessie McNamara. I'm also an attorney from Troon. I do primarily student issues work, special education, Title IX. I've worked with the district over the years. I've been with Troon since 2017, originally from Grayling, so it's nice to actually deal with some up north clients and get back to, where I love. But yeah, happy to answer any questions you guys might have and talk about, why we give the advice we give and how we reach those conclusions.
My name's Katie Broaddus. Yes, I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of you. I am primarily a labor and employment attorney with Troon Law Firm. I've represented school districts for 20 years. I've been with Troon for about 13. And I've I know some of you from some employment issues that we've worked together on. I know Michelle and Mary very well from negotiations. We've been in the trenches together. I can speak very confidently that you have some of the best employees in the area with whom I've participated with negotiations on. Both your unionized employees have a lot of passion for this district, a lot of passion for the work that they do, and are very proud of the work that they do and want to help improve Alpena Public Schools. And your administrators that I've worked with are just top-notch in terms of knowing your staff, knowing the issues in your district and where your needs are, and also knowing the finances of the district. Mary can give me answers at the drop of a hat as to what I need when I'm helping with negotiations. I've worked with your teachers union. I've worked with your paraprofessionals, your bus drivers. I've worked with your, not your secretaries, but some of your other, you have a Teamsters union. I've worked with the Teamsters union. Talked to Michelle before I came up here. Michelle did a great job with the last negotiations where she was able to kind of do that on her own. I'm happy to work with a lot of the HR directors. You've had quite a few, and I've started with Justin, worked with Sam in the last, when she was employed here, and then Michelle most recently. So very happy to see the progression of the hardworking individuals you have working for this district, and happy to help in any way I can.
Thanks, Katie and Jessica. So just to give a little bit of a historical background, our office has had the good fortune of working with Alpena schools since the 1960s. We served as counsel for your district back in that time frame on election issues, on finance issues, bond issues, and it has grown since then. Historically, our firm has focused almost exclusively on representing public schools here in the state of Michigan. Just with the three folks that you have here, you've got roughly 60 years of school law experience. We have a total of 30 attorneys in our office. And all of those folks, while in different niches throughout that school law realm, we all represent public schools almost exclusively. We do a little bit with some townships, we do a little bit with some cities, but essentially it's school districts that we work with. And we have a geographic footprint that we are very proud of. We go all the way from Copper Harbor down to New Buffalo and to Lenawee County and all points in between. And what that allows us to do is generate a level of experience, competence, and expertise that then our clients are able to benefit from. Because those kinds of questions that are very unique to schools, we have the good fortune of having that experience so that we don't need to do a deep 2, 3, 4 hour research dive because very frequently we've come across this issue before for a different client. And so we have that experience, that familiarity with some of those unique aspects of school law that basically save you money, save your taxpayers money, because we don't need to do that 2 or 3 hour dive, but can answer questions on a fairly straightforward and what we believe very economical basis for your district. So that kind of gives you a little bit of background about each of us individually, a little bit of background about our firm. We appear today at the board's request, so I guess we would open ourselves to questions, comments, discussion points that you all might have, rather than just listening to me jabber on. So, what can we help you with? I don't mean to box you guys out. Please, come on.
I have a question about the fees that you guys have listed here between like the retainer, non-retainer, shareholder, senior associate, and associate.
Yes.
How do you determine what issue goes where with that then, for the charges?
I'm sorry, what goes where with that?
Like, if we have an issue, who does that go to? The shareholder, the senior associate, the associate? Under what are we charged, and how do you determine where that goes?
Sure. The charge depends on the experience level. So personally, all three of us are shareholders. those attorneys that are in our office that have less experience are associates, either senior or standard associates. So it's based in part on the level of experience. And so when someone's a little less experienced, they're a little cheaper, just because there may be not the same efficiencies as what I was just describing a minute ago. So the district has choices. I mean, if you call up our office and you want to work with person X, the district gets to pick. We don't assign somebody over person X, you're going to work with Alpena. Alpena gets to choose, hey, we want person X or we want person Y. So part of that, a lot of that, is actually within your own control. And part of that is because you develop a familiarity with some of the issues. So for instance, Katie has worked with you all a great deal on your labor and employment kind of concepts. So it makes sense for Katie, because she has that institutional knowledge, so to speak, that she'd be kind of your go-to person. Now, if there was a reason that Katie wasn't available, she'd identify, hey, person X, can you help Alpena? Well, I'm indisposed, I can't help. But the district always has the opportunity to pick whomever they want to work with within the firm. So does that help answer that?
Yeah, thank you. I didn't know that we got to actually choose who,
Yes.
Thank
yep.
you.
No, we do divvy certain things up. Like Michael Gresson's one of my colleagues in the finance and elections area, works with you all on elections and finance, and he's really a pretty sharp guy. But if for whatever reason you ever wanted, and I'm not suggesting that you do, but if you ever wanted to move to somebody else, you could. That's totally in the district's discretion.
I'll just add, I think we've all had people that say, we'd rather work with this attorney, or we'd rather move in this direction. We don't take that personally. That is not anything that we are evaluated on or consider. It's just the preference of the client. So I always add that if that is something that you want to shift or move away from an attorney, it is absolutely no issue for us to accommodate that type of a request. You also mentioned retainer and non-retainer. And I'm going to take a stab at this, and I think if I miss anything, Christopher, you can come in and augment what I'm saying. But a retainer client has a lesser billable rate. Obviously, you can see that from that. But we offer other benefits of having a retainer relationship. Every month, we do a newsletter called School Law Notes that we send to our retainer clients. I would guess we have hundreds of people on that email list, because we represent about 500 districts in the state. So that newsletter of all school issues. So a lot of firms, they may put out newsletters, but you're going to get criminal law over here that has no bearing on school districts, or some property issue over here. All of our articles in School Law Notes have a bearing on school districts, school operations, all kinds of different issues: constitutional issues, student issues, labor and employment, finance, property, all kinds of issues. And so we're trying to keep clients up to date, and that is part of the benefits of being a retainer client. If you're a retainer client, you get the School Law Notes. If you're not a retainer client, you wouldn't receive that. In addition, we have several seminars that we put on every year that are without any charge to retainer clients, so they get to the benefit. We used to do them in person. Now we find that they're actually better attended virtually, so we put on those seminars every year. And then we have other things that we put out that we offer discounts for retainer clients. We offer a policy service, a whole manual of policies, similar to your Neola policy and policy book, and that is offered at a reduced rate to retainer clients as opposed to a non-retainer client. So when we have short-term conversations of like a couple minutes with somebody, Michelle calls me and says, I've got this employee that just did this, what are your thoughts? We have a short conversation. Those are not billed out at the regular hourly rate. We want people to call. We want them to bounce ideas off of us. If it leads into a larger issue, then we would bill for that time. But if it's a short issue, we would not bill for that time for our retainer clients. So there are some benefits to having a retainer relationship with the firm. Did I miss anything on the retainer? Okay.
Very complete, but there is one thing that I would add, and that is when we have a late-breaking issue. One of the things, because we are so laser-focused on schools, we watch for things that are kind of late-breaking. New legislation, new court case, new AG's opinion, things like that. And so if something has come out and it's really kind of a burning issue, can't wait for the end of the month when we send out our regular newsletter, we send out what we call e-blasts. And the e-blasts are short summary, usually in a memo form. Sometimes, depending on how involved it is, it can be a multi-page, but often it's just a single pager, just to get the information into the district client's hands so that they're aware of what that late-breaking issue is. And it's most important when, say, you have new laws that have immediate effect as opposed to it comes into play in a year or something like that. So that because it has immediate effect, we want you to know it right away. And so that's about the only thing I can think of that I'd add to Katie's description. Otherwise, she was very complete.
Do you have district clients who have relationships with other firms as well?
We do. Katie mentioned that we have about, actually, I think it's a touch more than 500 retainer clients throughout the state. And that includes both ISDs and K-12s, few PSAs. We are not necessarily their exclusive counsel. A number of districts do have additional counsel, and we're fine with that. Our philosophy is, our view is, that a school district gets to pick its counsel, and it gets to decide who it wants to use. And so if it wants to use multiple firms, that's fine. That's the district's decision, ultimately the board's decision, and that is certainly advantageous if the board thinks so. The one thing that I would recommend for any board that wants to do something like that, have some clarity as to how you're going to divvy up tasks so that you don't have a miscommunication as to who's carrying which wood. You want to make sure that it's clear for those different councils, you're on this, and have them see it to the end. If it's bouncing between firms, that can get very messy, and unfortunately, things can get messed up for you. So we would recommend against something like that, though.
Yeah, well, that sounds like very, very useful advice. And certainly, we recognize Troon's expertise in, many, many areas. I think maybe there are members of the public or maybe even in our own organization who don't seem to realize that this is not a bizarre arrangement to have more than one attorney representing you. So I'm glad that you have done that before and that it works well. That's good to hear. Thank you.
It's totally in the board's purview how it works, because you get to decide how you're going to implement it.
When do we pay our retainer? Do you know? Is it beginning of the year? We go for the retainer?
For our firm, it's issued in January, usually like the 2nd or the 3rd, and it covers the calendar year.
Anyone else?
Not me.
I guess that's all.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Thanks for coming up.
Thanks, guys.
Have a great evening.
Thank you. Okay.
Since we're still on the subject, though, of legal representation, do we have something, either it was stated in the update that there were some comments from Troon about the Coleman contract, and given that that's not in our discussion today, I'm wondering, are we going to see that contract on our desks next meeting?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
And we talked about, do we discuss this here? And if we do, those are specifics about their advice and the other contracts.
I
So
see, I
might be
see.
best to go into a closed session to go through that, but I will share with you there, because I was thinking it'd be a good opportunity to have them speak to you about it here. But then when they arrived and we talked through it, it was
I see.
figured to best not do that, just because it would be attorney-client privilege since they're advising us
I
on
understand. Thank you very much.
so I will share that with the board. There was nothing, what's the right word? No major hurdles to address, just preference of the district, of the board, things like that, on some terms, so. Is that fair to say, without bringing you into?
Sorry about that. Yeah, that's a very fair description. To the extent that the board wants to have, a conversation on that tonight, we could do that, but I would suggest that we probably want to do that in a closed session. And I actually brought a copy of the email in case we needed to do something like that. We could go into closed session on that. Totally up to the board's discretion. And if you want to kick it to the next meeting, that's fine too. Totally at your will.
And speaking as, I didn't see anything that would stop us from signing it with a few, minor changes to it. So again, I can share those with you in the update. And then I would plan to have it basically to say to the board at the regular meeting that I'm ready to sign it and talk about those minor changes. So if that
Okay.
works.
Good?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Christopher. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Up next would be our book study.
And I wasn't paying attention when I approved it. Would it be beneficial to Mary and Michelle to swap the finance and stuff with the book study so they don't have to sit here and listen to us? Or do you have a,
They each specifically came to me today and expressed how excited they were to sit in on the
Okay.
book study. So if that had not happened, I would agree with you. Yeah, just so my reason is we have this book discussion before we, do any board business. But again, it's a workshop, so I would be okay with that.
just for you guys?
They would probably be disappointed, but yeah. So I don't know how we go about doing that, amending the agenda to change.
Yeah,
the
I don't know
order.
the ramifications on that one. Eric, do you?
Eric, do you know if we changing the
Oh.
agenda at this point with the?
That's a good question. I don't off the top of my head know the answer, but if they want to hear it, I would say.
I was joking. Nobody.
I see.
Being there.
You were so convincing. I was
Thank you.
completely reeled in.
Yeah, no, they did not. So I would be okay if we wanted to change the order of the agenda and do business first and then book study second.
It looks like we'd have to make a motion to change it, but then we'd need at least a two-third vote for
That's fine.
approval.
I don't think we'll have a hard time.
Or
Yeah.
majority.
Can I make a motion?
I would entertain a motion for sure.
Okay. I would move that we put item 3 ahead of item 2. I think that's,
Okay. You have a Motion on.
I don't see anything
Second?
else.
Okay. The motion on the floor carried by, or supported by Sarah. Anything further on this? Okay, all in favor, show of hands, please. Okay, now it's all 6 of 6, so. All right, so we will hold off on the book study and move on to our finance and operations related items. We have the L 4029 2025 tax levy.
You have in your packet a copy of the L 4029 that will be distributed to the county, the city, and the townships. So we had our millage renewal. We held it in February. It passed. So we were able to start over again at the 18 mills. However, we had another Headley this year. So that Headley reduces our 18 mills. So we're back below 18 mills again. This is just the,
And since we got new board members, can you go through Headley? Do you want to pull out your presentation that we did last year?
okay, do you want me to?
Just a quick,
I can't-
walkthrough of how that process works.
So, school districts are allowed to levy 18 mills. They can pass a millage higher than that, so that when a Headley rollback kicks in, you don't go below the 18 mills. This was a discussion that we had with the board for few different months about what approach to take. The board chose to just set it at 18 mils, so now we're below the 18 mils that we could have levied because we did not put on the ballot the extra 2 mils to help insulate the district. Headley rollback comes when the property taxes increase over, or the inflation rate adjusts the property taxes, and there's an increase in them. So it's causes what the law viewed as being too big of an increase in the property taxes, so they roll them back at a certain millage fraction reduction. I have a PowerPoint that I could show you if you
Maybe
if you
can just
want.
you send it out, it would probably be great. Or, yeah.
Okay.
It's really
So it's just has to do with the rate of inflation and the adjustments that were made in the taxable values and that. So with this levy, of course, we ended up with a millage reduction fraction of 0.9958. So that puts us down to 17 mils, 0.9154.
Can I put you on the spot?
Sure.
Do you happen to know what .9958, not to the exact penny, but how much that equates?
I honestly started to calculate that out and then got pulled away and then I forgot all about it. I meant to do that and have it. I
Just
can
give us
have
a
it
ballpark.
for,
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember the numbers that we talked about during
So-
the 18% amounts to a significant portion of our operating, or I'm sorry, no, I'm confusing the operating revenue. Go about your business.
okay.
Sorry.
So then the second line on there you'll see is for the debt millage for the bonds that we sold for the, we had two different series. So that's all about this form. If you have any questions or whatever, I will locate that PowerPoint and get it sent out, but
So this is just our yearly procedure.
this is yes, we have to do this annually.
Yeah, this isn't about Headley, which your presentation is about Headley. This is just now the impact of yet another Headley rollback.
Yeah.
This is just
The
about-
presentation was really about school funding and taxes and how they affect the
Mm-hmm.
Prop A and all that stuff. So,
A couple quick questions, I think. Can you give us like, I know you were working on calculating it, but maybe even prior years, can you give us a ballpark of what it's been in prior years? Just for
what has been?
the calculation of what that .9958 produces in terms of real money.
So, okay, so the funds that we lost over the past few years due to the rollback is what you want to see?
Just the total that we do get,
Total that we do get.
like the amount of money that we do.
Okay, yeah,
Receive.
I can put something together like that.
Just kind of as a ballpark. And my other question, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, so
That's
if you don't
okay.
know it, that's okay. Do you know, like, roughly how much of that 1.4 billion is Presqu'île? Because I know we have just that little chunk of Presqu'île.
I do not off the top of my head,
Okay.
to any, like,
I was just.
there's so many numbers in here.
Oh,
it's
I know.
like-
The reason I ask is I was looking at that, and just for, I guess, for the other board members, for their perspective, when I was a county commissioner, this number for Alpena County was about 900, something around 900 million something. And that was what Alpena County was worth, in a sense, if you look at the real estate. And now to see this number, pushing $1.5 billion, that gives us some idea, why our taxes are so high, but also what that Headley really means in terms of for the consumers, for the taxpayers, what that means for them, and probably why that, the legislature chose to do what it did. But also, it's a lot of money to to us as well. So I think that's a significant question. But anyway, thank you very much.
Okay.
Mary, were you going to share the public school accounting presentation? Is that the one? Can you see that?
I have to look and see what's in that one.
If that's the case, it's the one that's in the update down at the bottom. It's been there. Because I think you presented it maybe in the fall or something like that.
I did do one in the fall. I think it was public school accounting, the one with the frogs at the end of it.
Yeah, and they can't open it. So if that's the case, then it's here. But I don't know if it's the same one you're planning on.
I don't think it was that one. I think it was further back than that, because that was,
Yeah, because we did
was
specific to
wintertime.
Headley and that.
we were at, actually the first time.
We were in the auditorium.
Yep, at the
Yeah,
junior
at the
high.
junior
Yeah.
high. Yeah.
Okay,
So
anything?
I'll square up with you on that.
Okay, yep, I wrote it out too. All right. Do you want to stay up there, Mary?
don't go
or
far, Mary.
We're up next is the 2025-2026 general appropriations budget. Oh, she's just getting more papers.
Have that one.
Easy one, I guess.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We're starting with the easy one. We're starting with the easy one.
So this is our student activity fund. And this fund used to be truly an external fund that we just kind of watched over a little bit, and they could basically do whatever they wanted with it. A few years ago, GASB, Governmental Accounting Standard Board, passed a GASB ruling that these funds had to be brought under the school district's purview. So they are now a governmental fund. So this is our fairly new Fund 29. So the first one, where it says 24-25 final, is of course the final one for the end of this year. Just a second. This fund has fund equity of $410,603. They brought in new revenue of approximately $296,031, which is approximate for this year because we still have receipts and stuff that have not been turned in, and bank statements are not finalized for June yet. We have budgeted expenses of $400,812. So that means at the end of this year, they will be pulling out of their fund equity $104,781.
When you say they, can you clarify who you mean by
The
they?
student
Like,
activity fund.
are they the PAC,
So this
PACs
is,
or?
well, we have a couple PACs that are still in here. We're
Okay.
trying to encourage our PACs to get 501c3s so they can be out on their own. They have their own liability insurance, and they're responsible for their funds.
Okay.
So this is like the different clubs,
Oh, okay.
the athletic groups, if they have, money, it's like that. Each building has a principal fund where we get a commission check, basically, from when the pictures or yearbooks or whatever were sold. So that goes into the principal's fund. So they have that little bit of discretionary money they can buy extra things for their building with or whatever.
Thanks. I just wasn't sure who they was, so that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. So they're using $104,781 of their fund equity at the end of this year. So if you go to the proposed one, the fund equity less the 104,781 leaves us $305,822.50. So we are budgeting as if they're going to spend every last penny that they have available to them, and it will come out zero at the end of next year. We do that because I have no idea what these clubs are going to do, and it's not really, while it's considered a governmental fund, it doesn't really have a huge bearing on our financials, on the district's financials. So we just do it this way because it's easier, and I have no idea what they're going to spend during the year. It would be very, very hard for me to guess what they're going to spend.
Does each club have, I want to say, a checking account basically out of this, or does like debate club have $40,000 that they put into the fund equity and that's what they draw out of, or
Yes.
is that how I?
So each fund has or each club that has money in this fund has a revenue account and has an expense account. And as they put revenue in, their revenue budget's adjusted and their expense account is increased. So those always equal each other. And the expense account starts out with whatever they had in fund equity. So we can keep track of each individual's group's fund equity. It's really a pain.
Okay. I was just going to say, so when the FFA has their fruit sale and brings in all that, and that's run through this.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And they each have a little identifier at the end of the major account number that tells us what account it is and whose money that is and whose expenses those are, so that we know each individual club's balance.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Mary Sue O'Brien used to handle this years ago over at the high school, but now it's
Yeah.
dumped into your lap.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now
When Betty was here, she did it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And that was a tough transition.
Yeah.
People struggling to understand that change, and it wasn't just
Yeah.
a Mary decision, but it was driven by the accounting practice changes.
And I can imagine the frustration, because now instead of just going down to the main office at the high school, now we got to come, because I, believe it or not, was treasurer for FFA one year by some accident. and I was down to Mary's office in the main weekly, multiple times in a week,
Yeah.
making deposits or getting withdrawals. So
Yeah, it's still, the high school still takes in the receipts, but they send all the banking information over to us so we can make sure that everything is where it's supposed to be. It's just a lot, and it's hard to get people to understand that, well, we used to be able to do it. We can't anymore because now you got to work under the governmental rules, so, sorry. And that's been a pain, really, to try and get that across to everybody.
And I think just to further with the confusion there, when you mentioned PACs, we do have PACs that are 501(c)(3)s, and so their money is completely handled and accounted for by those organizations. But then we have some PACs that are district PACs, and so people look at the two and say, well, why do you do it this way when they're two entirely different entities with very similar practices, but it's who's overseeing the practices, and we always come with more regulations, I believe, than the rest of the world.
We do.
Okay. Any further questions on this? All right. 80/20 insurance declaration and resolution.
No.
Oh, that was just the
that was
one.
just
Oh, you're
page
just doing
one.
each one. Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah. So I was like,
Nice
usually
try,
it's pretty
Anna.
packed.
Nice
I was
try.
trying, gang. Sorry.
appreciate it.
This is food service.
Usually they're all in a big packet. This is
Yeah.
easier though. This is
Yeah.
to be able to.
I felt like everybody was getting lost in the big bucket,
Yep. This
so-
is much easier to follow.
I feel like like singing Johnny Cash right now. One page at a time.
Food service is a federally regulated fund. It has a few different rules than some of the other ones do. And we had built up a very healthy fund equity, and the state this past year told us we needed to spend it down. So we bought a lot of new equipment across the different buildings this year. And that is why when you look at this final budget, under the amended budget roll, you'll see we're coming out at negative $214,859. And that was done on purpose to draw down the fund equity. So in this final budget, we have $2,906,800 for revenue and total expenses of $121,659. So that's they have over $800,000 in fund equity. So this will reduce their fund equity to around $600,000.
Why do we keep so much, or how does that build?
It builds up because if we don't need to spend it, like we got some grants for the equipment. I was able to replace a freezer and a stovetop with a federal grant last year before. So there was that covered that. We didn't have a lot of equipment that we needed to fill. And then your revenues from your catering, if you do a lot of catering, it's going to increase your revenues. This year and last year, with the state back funding what the federal doesn't pay for free and reduced, the state back funds it and then pays for the full pay child. So that's changed things a little bit too. Federal government will only pay a certain amount for a free lunch or for a reduced lunch, and then the state makes up the difference. And it's just, basically we didn't have to replace a lot of equipment over the last few years, but now this year we really needed to, because we had some freezers that were giving us headaches and needed to replace some stuff because it was getting pretty old. So we decided to do a lot of that this year.
Because that seems like a common statement for you on this budget, is we need to spend this equity down. I think the last 2 or 3 years you've said that.
Yeah, well, I knew we were getting to the point where the state was going to get after us, and I couldn't get it spent to get it to where they wouldn't say anything to us. So we purposely set out this year to do that.
Okay.
But those demands, you're only allowed to have a certain percent come from the federal level. They don't come from the state level.
I'm just surprised because to me, food service should be a money in, money out. That it's a revenue source almost. I mean, it has to stay in food service, doesn't? Am I looking at this wrong, Mary?
Well, you do have revenue coming in, but then your expenses also, they entail the food, equipment, your personnel, their benefits, so it's never going to wash, because you've got your catering revenue, which has to be at a profit. So the state demands that if we run catering, we have to have a profit on it. So we can't just charge people exactly what it costs. We have to make a profit on it. The adult lunches are the same way. So the staff that buys the adult lunches, we have to make a profit on that. That's why the adult lunch price is different than the child lunch price. So it's...
There is a little revenue built into the system. You're telling me that, yes, we are making money with this, it's not a wash,
Right,
and you're laying out where it is.
right,
Okay.
yeah. So if we look at next year, these are just projected numbers. We do have the possible increases in there for the food service union. So those are calculated in there. The increases for the food service director, the increases for the food service secretary, those are all in there. They're all in there at what we speculated the contracts would settle at. Contracts are not settled. So these numbers may change as soon as the contract gets settled. So we calculated increases based on what we thought, the way we thought it was going to go, so that we have enough in our budget is closer to reality. But we don't know the true reality yet. So that's why these are, next year, it comes out even. We usually do that with food service because we don't want to build the fund equity. And we want to try to maintain. Okay? This is the first series of the bond sales.
Thank you.
Like I said, this is the first series of the bond sale. So this fund has fund equity of $307,917. We had projected revenue of $11,722, and we have expenses of $319,369. So I'm closing out this fund this year. That's why there's no proposed budget for it. With the next payment that goes out to Clark and the final interest that comes in for June and gets recorded, this fund will close out. So our first series of the bond will be done. This is the second series.
Thanks, Mary.
This is the second series of the bonds that were sold. This fund has $11,583,863.80 in fund equity. We have projected revenue through the end of this year of $467,028 and projected expenses of $7,660,727 in expenses. So that leaves us with a possible fund balance for next year of $4,390,164 And then projected possible revenue, which would be coming from interest of $200,000. So on the proposed budget, we have proposed expenses of $4,590,164. So this completely would use up this fund as of the end of next year. Now, that's pure speculation because I don't know if we'll get to that point by the end of next year. We may still have a little bit left over that we have to work through to, different projects around the district that need to be done. So the bond funds for next year, we do need to have a planning session with Clark on where to apply those funds. We do have windows across the district, Thunder Bay, Lincoln, Sanborn, windows that the seals are gone on them and they're starting to fog. Those need to be replaced. That will be an energy savings for the district also. We have siding on some schools that need to be replaced. We still have facial work at the high school that can be done. There's many projects that were on our wish list at the time that we passed the bond that we still need to touch if at all possible. So we will need to figure out what we need to do with the balance on this. Simon has a list.
Simon does.
So, is there any questions on this one?
I guess it's sort of related, Mary. What is our interest rate that we're paying on all these bonds?
That we're paying on them?
Yeah.
I think it was like 2 point.
But that's close
86.
enough.
I think it was 2.86.
Oh. Dirt cheap then, really.
We got, our credit rating is extremely good at the time that we passed the bonds, and we got some really good rates on the bonds. We happened to hit that at the right time. And now that we have the funds in our hands, we are hitting the bank interest at the right time. So we have raked in a lot of interest on this. So it has helped us get a few more things done around the district.
Awesome.
Paired with the energy,
Yes.
the work too, that was $7.6 million funded through energy rebates. So we were able to take all of that work out of the Safe, Warm, Dry bond, fund it with the energy program, and then return, use that money that's now freed up for more Safe, Warm, Dry bonds. So we've gotten quite a bit of work done, and we have quite a bit of work still to be done.
Speaking of the energy bond. This is the energy bond. So this fund has a fund equity of $15,929. We had we'll have new revenue recorded of about $750. And we did not spend anything out of this fund this year. However, with the work that's being done at the high school, some of the exterior doors are going to be charged here, and this will be closed out as of the end of next year. So you see your proposed budget as an additional $100 token for interest revenue, and then fully expending the $16,779. And that one will be done.
And if you're looking for the 7.6 million I referred to, that was 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was 2021 when I set this fund up. So, any questions on that one? No?
Pass it around. Oh, boy. Yeah, we're getting there. Oh, we're working up here, Mary.
Huh?
We're getting more involved.
Yeah, this is the big one. Okay. And before you ask, Eric, I did not pull the fund equity amount for this one, so I'll look it up for you, though. Okay, so the final for this year, we're projecting $56,910,849 for revenue. Some of that may not be realized because we have to, the grants are written in fully. If we don't fully expend it, we can't draw it. So you have revenue and expenses for the grant, and they both are the same. However, if we don't expend the grant, we can't draw the revenue for the grant. So we can draw what we spent, but we can't draw any more than that. So they always balance out. In those federal grants that have been, like McKinney-Vento, that's carried over for a couple of years and things like that, you're supposed to keep your original budget in. So it looks like you have way more than what you do. So this 56 million will not be realized due to those facts. So our expenditures for this year are $56,096,189. That is putting in projected $814,666 into fund equity. This is low because I transferred out, or I proposed to transfer out where's that? 1.7 million into the long-range maintenance and long-range tech, most of it going into long-range maintenance, which we'll go over those in a few minutes. I did this because our fund equity in the general fund is getting hefty. And this is a good opportunity for us to set aside money for strategic planning, for cyclical planning with technology. You know, we have to replace the Chromebooks on a regular basis, replace all the computers, replace the Wi-Fi connections, replace this and that, you know, on a regular basis, because they wear out just like anything else does. So we have to be able to plan for that. And Simon has lists, again, for things that need to be done. And some of it is on a cyclical basis. So we're projecting out, you know, the new roofs have been put in there in his projections, but they're way out. We have roof repairs, though, at Thunder Bay that need to be done, different things like that. I have 2 new buses that I've put into the budget for long-range maintenance because 09 has holes in the floor, and we can't drive it anymore. And there's another one that will not pass inspection this year. So we are retiring those buses and selling them off, and we need to replace them. So that's why that big chunk is in there like that. Now, expenses, we will not realize all these expenses. So there's different areas of money still sitting in here because we have the teachers' wages and benefits that have to be for July and August that have to be accrued back to this year. So those are not fully expended until the end of August. We have money left in maintenance and transportation and things like that, so that if we have an unexpected bill, and believe me, it happens, as much as I try to get everybody to use purchase orders, sometimes they don't. And we end up with a bill that I don't know anything about, so I leave money in the budget on the table to cover unexpected things like that. So the 814,000 will probably be closer, I don't know, maybe $1.5 million or something like that by the time it's all done.
Did you say that was the number that was going into fund equity?
The 814,000, yes.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Even with the money you pulled out of?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Not bad. Good job, Mary.
Thanks. So when we look at our proposed budget, I'm sure Dave's kept you guys a little bit informed, or maybe you guys have listened about the state budget. It's not passed. This is the worst year I have ever seen in 25 years. I'm just amazed that they are so far apart. I did go with the 10,000 in the governor's proposal for the Per Pupil Foundation allowance. The House has proposed to eliminate a lot of the categoricals. So they would eliminate the isolated districts or the transportation. So we get revenue for both of those things, and the House was eliminating it, along with a lot of other things. If you remember last year, I talked about we did not get a Per Pupil Foundation increase. Instead, they gave us a lump sum of $1.2 million on a retirement code, section 147. That is not included in any of the new budgets, the governor, the House, the Senate. So we lost a per pupil, and now we're losing that funding also. So this was a tough one for me. I went through this, Denise and I combed through to see what we could do. We do have a fund equity, and if you ask me, do I very seriously think that what this is going to come out actually pulling $248,000 from fund equity? I will tell you no. I don't actually think it's going to pull money out of the fund equity at the end of the year. I did the best with the projections that I had, guessing. We budgeted, Dave and I talked about several things. We agreed on budgeting down 20 students. Will we lose more than 20? Possibly. And this budget will have to be adjusted. But until I know for sure what the state is doing and they pass their final budget, this is what I have for you. Any questions?
I'd rather you figure on the conservative side, Mary. So we're not surprised.
It really has been a crazy year. Don't even know what to make of it. You've probably seen people touting that this is the greatest investment in public education ever. And it's very deceptive because of two things. Like Mary said, we didn't get a pupil increase last year. And so we're actually a year behind on that. And now with, impressive numbers of 10,000, and that sounds great, but for us, that 147 is 1.6 million that we're now, again, going back to last year, we didn't get an increase, and now we're subtracting 1.6 million this year. So you got to make up that 1.6 million and make up last year's pupil pupil foundation allowance. That 10,000 doesn't come close to covering it. It sounds great.
So-
Absolutely sounds wonderful, but
Yeah.
it's not.
When I took projection numbers, like when the governor first put hers out, and she was saying the $10,000, I was like, there's no way. There's no way. So I calculated our numbers, calculated our ORS stuff, and came up with about $49 per student. So it's what they're saying, every one of them, the House, the Senate, the governor, what they're saying is not the whole true picture of what they're offering us. And it's a shame. It's a true shame that they are transferring so much out of the school aid fund to the colleges, who can charge tuition. You know,
Yeah.
so,
And in the House's proposal, they're taking away the categoricals, and again, in theory, that sounds great. Categoricals means we have rules to follow and how we can spend the money. So you reduce that, we have more flexibility, the illusion of local control. But one of those categoricals they're taking away is transportation. And we are not the same as Grosse Pointe, Birmingham, Rochester, any Harper Woods, we're not. And so they're taking that back, and this likely isn't to pass, but they're taking that away from us and putting it into a fund that is then equally distributed across the state of Michigan. So again, when we spend 8.5% of our budget on transportation, and some of those districts down in metro areas spend between 1 and even 4 on the high end, that's not equitable. And it's a direct negative impact to us that most other districts don't feel.
so the other one is the isolated districts. And the isolated districts was passed many years ago. And the intent behind that was to help northern Michigan districts, or places like Beaver Island or Bois Blanc or Mackinac, or, where their staff has to travel so much farther to attend a conference, which is normally held downstate. So it was passed to kind of even the playing field a little bit. Same concept with the transportation. So they're taking those advantages away, and now we're behind. And we're trying to keep up with, we're trying to keep our curriculum going, our staff wages going, and we have less to compete with. And that was completely unfair, the way they approached that.
The more I learn about this process, the more I guess to borrow a phrase from Pride and Prejudice, the more compassion I have on Mary's poor nerves, because this is really something. I guess were we really surprised? I mean, it wasn't last year was the largest state budget in the history of the state, and so with the legislature turning over, for them to want to sort of correct, they're probably saying, oh, you guys are spending without restraint, we're going to fix that. It's not really surprising, but I think what I'm hearing is that our school districts are caught in the crossfire of this.
They are.
Yeah,
And
that's a shame. You're right.
It's completely unfair that they are transferring so much for the colleges. They can charge tuition. They have all kinds of sponsors and past, alumni that support them in many different ways. Then we don't have that. I mean, we have a little bit of it, but nothing compared to what they have. And that's what is ridiculous about the House's budget, is there's a huge chunk in there for that. And so to me, that's not correcting it. That's just spending it in another way.
Yeah, I agree. And you've given us some fodder for angry calls to our representatives, so thank you.
Okay, this is our long-range maintenance, so the final, so long-range maintenance had a fund equity of $507,646. We added a revenue this year through a fund modification of $403,289. Total expenditures for this fund is $803,962. So we're spending 400,673 of the fund equity. So that gives us our final for this. Ouch, for this one. I'm looking at the wrong one. Yep. Okay. So that leaves us with a proposed fund equity of $371,817. For next year, on the proposed one, you'll see the 1.2 million that I transferred from general fund for long-range planning, 2 buses, different things that we need to do around the district. And the proposed expenditures for next year are 1.6 million, leaving a fund equity, that fully expends the fund equity, I'm sorry. So with this, the goal, what we've always done in the past was aim to spend it fully. I budgeted it that way this year. That won't happen because we are going to set aside some of this for long-range planning. But I did budget it that way because I'm not sure where the budget will fall and sure what we're going to push to the bond instead of having it paid for in this fund, pay for it with the bond. So there's some thought process there to figure out what goes where and what we can afford between the bond and what was transferred into this fund. So for right now, it's fully expending the fund at the end of next year, which will not happen, but it's just getting the numbers on there so that we know what we have and what we have available to spend. Any questions? The last one. So this is the long-range technology. Same concept as long-range maintenance for long-term planning and current needs for the technology department. This fund has $309,781 in fund equity. This year, there's projected revenue of $295,404 and projected expenditures of $599,264, which we would be drawing out of the fund equity of $303,860 if everything gets expended that's projected in the budget. For next year, we have $549,482 in projected revenue. Part of it is E-rate refunds, and part of it is the transfer from general fund. We have expenses of $891,819, which fully expends the projected fund balance of $342,333. Again, same concept as the long-range maintenance. Budget it, thinking you're going to spend it, but obviously we're not, because I want Andrew to upgrade our cyclical replacements on our technology devices, and he started working on that. Oh, Andrew's brand new, so every time he's working on it anyways, to get it to where Simon's got his, and we've given him some examples and stuff, and he's started digging into it to design a replacement cycle. So this is this budget includes the 6th grade Chromebooks that are bought every year, teacher computers, your displays, the administration computers, things like that. So those things, like I said before, they all go through, a computer only lasts maybe 10 years if you're lucky, if you can get the updates to keep going. Computers or the Chromebooks are slated for like 8 years or something. But our 6th grade ones, we buy them and distribute them to the 6th graders, and they keep them all through high school, and they leave with that device. So because by that time, after they've used it for 6 years, it's pretty much not worth a whole lot. So we get new ones for the next 6th grade class with all the new upgrades and everything on them, and go that route. Any questions? Okay.
The fund balances.
Okay. So the way the fund equity works is basically you have your incoming revenue, your outgoing expenses, and that would be what you're adding to your fund equity at the end of that year. So that pot either grows or dissipates over the years. It dissipated when we went into deficit. So a district is considered in deficit by the state when they get below a 5% fund balance. Truly in deficit, which is when Black Friday and all that happened, is when you have zero money in the bank. And you have to wait for your revenues the next year to start coming in and things, So it's a growing pot of money. Some of it is set aside for certain things. When you look at our fund equity in the budget, you'll notice that part of it is unspendable, part of it's committed, part of it's reserved for different areas, different reasons, stuff like that. So when you look at and that's a short and simple explanation of fund equity, but I hope it helps you understand.
You talked, though, there's a food service fund equity, there's a technology, there's more than just our general fund
Right.
equity.
Yes, each fund has its own fund equity, just like it has its own set of revenue and its own set of expenditures. So
we can't take money from the food service fund equity to spend on textbooks or something like that?
No. Food service, their fund equity is restricted, so you can't pull it or use it anywhere else. The bond funds, for example, those bond funds can only be used for projects to improve our buildings. We can't use them for wages, we can't transfer money out of them, we can't, they are dedicated to that purpose only. The general fund is our big fund where most of our expenditures come out of, most of our wages come out of, other than food service. So that's our big one. That's our operating one. So just to take the same process as we used last year, if you come up with any questions, email them to me. I will answer you. I will bring those questions back to the regular board meeting. We will read your question and my answer out loud at the board meeting before we adopt the budget. So in case you don't understand something or you want a little bit more information, okay?
I think you've finally got me trained to stop asking about net position and to wait for the fund equity number. So thank you for that. Appreciate the explanation.
Thank you, Mary. Anyone have anything further on that before we continue? All right, the 80/20 insurance declaration and resolution for 24-25.
Actually, it should say 25-26.
Okay.
So this is the resolution that we adopt each year so that the district pays 80% of the healthcare and prescription premiums for the employees, and the employees pick up the other 20%. So we do this rather than do the hard cap because we are still under the hard cap.
Yeah, why don't you talk about our rate increases?
Oh, so we're insured through Blue Cross Blue Shield, and we received just a little bit over a 5% increase, which was wonderful. I've heard horror stories from other districts with Mesa or different groups, insurance, 31%, 17%, 25%. We really got lucky. So I was very happy when we got those rate numbers.
So what is out of pocket for an employee? Like what is, locally a district was hit with 31% increase, and that was catastrophic to many of their employees.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have that in your head, like what 5% increase for our employees is dollar-wise?
No, I don't.
Darn it. But 5%
I
versus
have it.
31%.
But it's not in my head.
So I just say that because,
Yeah.
like, you know, we are the only, I don't know where the next closest geographically, the district that is self-funded, but we are certainly an anomaly up in this area.
Mm-hmm.
Again, because of our size, you know, and smaller districts can pool with others and things like that. But here is a great opportunity to say, we just saved 27%, no, 26% by being self-funded for our employees, and everyone across the board would be experiencing that. I know there's been a lot of conversation about Mesa. We've looked into Mesa with our unions. Mesa could not meet our rates at the time, and they're experiencing very large increases. Not the 31% to my knowledge, but we're in good shape right now. Not to say that it's not coming, because insurance, as we all know, is going through the roof, and we may, but I remember when you came into the office, just pale and worried like they're going to be announcing it soon, and we were starting to hear these other districts saw huge increases, and then we got a 5%, so.
Yeah. So a lot of other districts also have adopted the hard cap. So the hard cap is the district can only pay this much, and whatever's over that amount, the employee has to pay. We're still below the hard cap with our premiums. So our employees aren't, like, most of the districts have hit that, so their employees are have to pick up that difference. So that when their rates increase, it's a bigger hit to the employee if they've hit that, if their premium has hit that hard cap amount. So, and that changes every year too. They recalculate that every year, but I was thrilled.
Go on to the annual renewal of School of Choice 105 and 105C.
And so this is just an annual process where the board renews or authorizes us to engage in school of choice. 105 is within the county, and 105C is contiguous to our county. We don't have any 105 students because Alpena County is the school district. But if we were somewhere that had multiple districts inside a county, that would apply. But 105C allows us to get school of choice students from the contiguous counties. I don't have this year's numbers, but last year we had an influx of about 116 students through School of Choice. And then that is, in some cases, it's different too, as our CTE students that come in for those CTE classes. But School of Choice are students that choose to come to Alpena schools for their general education. So it's just an annual authorization allowing us to do that, and then we would be accepting enrollments throughout the year. Yeah. Jumped ahead in the calendar this year. June's last meeting should be the 29th. Pushing as late as possible. Did y'all?
Yep, we can talk about it when we get on the
Yeah.
agenda with, or it's probably gonna sneak out, so it's always related to the budget, move as late as possible.
She's gonna miss out on the book study.
Okay, anything else for Mary before Michelle? If they want it, more than welcome to stay, of course.
All
Okay.
right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Thank you. Okay, well, now we can move on to our book study. We have item 3 complete.
Mary, I did scoop your piece if you would like. Okay.
All right, so I will just do a little background. One of the areas that we are focusing on as a board and superintendent is board development. So we came across this book and initiated a book study on it. And so this month we are looking at chapters 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. What is our why? Representing community, the community's visions and goals, the community's values and guardrails, and board work versus superintendent work. And then I was so bold as to just kind of, introduce each chapter. So I was in the what is our why, and of course we have the questions that go along this with. But in what is our why, the author gives the example of the board focusing on the implementation of a new curriculum versus focusing on the student outcomes of that curriculum. And I just kind of highlighted some points. Effective school boards do care about how money is being spent, which people are being hired, which vendor is selected. But they know that when a board is focused on the how, they have stopped being focused on the why, whether or not the children are better off. And that comes directly from the book in that chapter. So I was just trying to capture the relevance of the example. And then the other point was school boards exist to represent the vision and values of their communities in such a way that they create the conditions for improved student outcomes. And this is easy to say, but can be difficult to practice. This is partially because distinguishing between the wants and issues of individual community members and the vision/values of the community can be challenging. So just a couple of points from the chapter. And our questions for Chapter 5 are, why is it crucial for school boards to have a clear understanding of their why? How can school boards effectively align their goals with community visions and values? Why is it so easy for school boards to get focused on adult inputs rather than student outcomes? And where have you seen this on your own board? And what are the examples of effective goals and guardrails mentioned? How do they help in achieving the school board's vision? So should we just go one question at a time, or? Why is it crucial for school boards to have a clear understanding of their why? And of course, what is the why?
I kind of felt like I feel like his definition of why school boards exist is a little narrow, but I understand why he's making the point. And I think the way he makes it does give a pretty good, what's the word I'm looking for? Brain is not working. It bolsters his position that you should be aware of the percentage of time you're spending on student outcomes. And so if you embrace his definition, then that informs your agenda building so that you are spending more time on student outcomes.
And I guess I'll take that tee off, and do we embrace that that's the definition or a definition that we'd be comfortable with, that we exist to...
His definition?
Yeah, we exist to improve student outcomes, essentially. And let me just correct, you, the board, I said we.
Oh, yeah.
But and the reason I don't entirely agree with it is that I feel it doesn't embrace necessarily all of our statutory duties that we really do need to be responsible for. But I don't mind him, sort of pushing us to prioritize student outcomes. That doesn't, that in itself doesn't bother me. I just feel like there's more to it. When you look at the Public Act. I want to say 791, but I don't think that's right. 619. No, that's not right either. What's the?
461.
Is that it? Is that 461? That could be right.
I'm not good at remembering those numbers, but.
451. 451. Revised School Code of 1976. But anyway, that doesn't really bother me that he makes that point, because I think it's a good one.
And I think in the later chapter, goals, I forget which one, but.
Yeah, he does acknowledge that
Yeah, I
you
think
have
that's
other
the
things
hard
to
part
do.
of this chapter, is it kind of just touches on things. I keep thinking, oh, but that wasn't actually in chapter 5. So I even thought, there was something, and maybe it was in chapter 5, and I'm not finding it, where focusing on policy, and it's obviously a big part of our role, but still, I don't know if it was this chapter where he said, well, look at your agenda is still even, you should, yes, it's a role, but how much of your agenda is still focusing on outcomes versus everything else, so.
And I think in board work versus superintendent work, that chapter, he makes the point that the board's work is anything directly related to the values and guardrails and goals, not excluding all the legal requirements and everything.
I liked the owner versus customer analogy. That was kind of interesting.
Since we're there, can you explain that? Like, what do you think?
Well, the owners are the
Just for the
community members, the people. The way I would describe it is sort of since I've done so much with mental health, I channel a lot of stuff through that mindset. So for example, we are the board is the embodiment of the community in our catchment area. So that we basically embody those people. Those are the owners, the people who are students, teachers, people who particular connections to the district. Those are more like customers, and so the division of labor is such that if it's an ownership question, that's the board's bailiwick, and if it's a customer question, it should go to the superintendent. So I thought that was kind of a nice succinct way of putting it, that also ties into that, again, that embodiment of the superintendent, the embodiment of the district, and the board, the embodiment of the community or owners.
And I thought the point of challenging that many sit in both roles, you know, a parent
Right.
and staff member and so on, that it's a challenge to separate those out.
Right, you just have to sort of suss out, which hat is this person wearing?
Yeah, yeah.
I think page 97 is where he pretty much lays out the school system only exists for improving outcomes. Would it be fair to say, Dave, that if you accept this premise, that you will have to do, the school system would have to do some serious self-reflection?
Tell me more. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking that there's a lot of things that adults add on that don't improve student outcomes. And I think if you really wanted to take this and run with it, you would be looking at what I would almost term a lean school. Are you familiar with like a lean concept?
Like manufacturing
Yeah,
lean?
manufacturing. I would think that, I would think you would almost be back with our doctor here. I ain't even going to try to say his name.
Mice or, yeah.
Yeah. I think you'd almost be back with him, with how your district would actually look if you only focused on student outcomes.
So I think I know what you're talking about. And that's the same division, in my opinion, too, of there's a lot that we have to do because of the law that says we have to do these sorts of things that may not directly impact education. And so, you know, when you say adults keep adding things, there certainly could be things we've added locally as a district, but also there's an awful lot that's expected of public schools from forces outside of the public schools that we have to respond to. And then, like we kind of touched on, in my opinion, you know, if every student is coming at the same level of readiness, you know, and support and health and all of those factors, that's a very different picture of education than what we're experiencing right now. And so, you know, by nature, our teachers will take care of our students and meet them where they are and provide them the additional supports that may not be directly in line to student outcomes, but without providing those supports, the student doesn't have a chance to improve those student outcomes.
Well, I'm going to be tried for this, tarred and feathered for this one. But I want to go down as the bellwether that I think you're going to sink the ship trying to save everybody. I think long term that the school systems can't do what they're what they are being demanded of, and that at some point there's going to have to be a line drawn in the sand and say, this is it, this is all we're going to do, we can't do it, and it's more important that we do this, even if it means that not everybody's going to get a college education or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things in there that I agree. We can't do everything that's demanded of public education because it's essentially been the dumping ground for fixing society.
Correct.
And I agree with that.
So I guess my challenge would be grab onto this and make that your line in the sand. And it's gonna hurt, but I think you might be the one to do it, Dave.
So, appreciate that. I think there's a lot to be clarified in what we're talking about there.
Just to maybe focus this discussion a little bit, if you look ahead to page 123, as we talk about goals, there are all these really interesting statements about goals that include maybe very specific groups of students, very smart goals, measurable and attainable and not time sensitive, time bound. And I think maybe that's where we begin, with these kind of questions is, let's give ourselves something measurable that we can really do without worrying about saving the entire world. But I really like these because these look like exactly, again, I hate to keep mentioning mental health, but this is exactly what our monitoring reports look like. It says, we have, we said this population of consumers, we're going to see this percentage improvement in this measurable mental health, or of course we're dealing with a lot of comorbidities these days. We're looking at their physical health as well, and in a way that it's much less stressful because you don't have these looming massive things in front of you. You give yourself something really attainable, and I really like that. But to your general point, the way I'm reading this book is I'm trying to join this gentleman in his intellectual exercise of what would this be like, and without the idea of worrying about implementing any of these particular things, like right now. For example, I think Dave might squawk if we look at page 96 and say, your evaluation will always be based on whether or not the students learn to read at age-appropriate levels, as if that's the only measure. And we know that his evaluation has maybe even some adult inputs in there, which make it a little broader. So I'm not worried about, personally anyway, about implementing everything here. I'm just trying to go along with the intellectual journey, the intellectual exercise, and I think taken in that way, it's kind of fun.
But above on page 96, that would be inside of a student outcome focused mindset, right? The evaluation, that's the main goal. It's not about the adults. It's are the children learning? Are they where they should be? Are they doing better?
I think part of your evaluation is tied to those measures, but it's only part of it.
But it should be the main focus. That's what we're learning in student outcome, right?
This is about the board.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like the student outcome,
Yeah.
like that's what we want, is like we are
Yeah.
for the students, not the adults.
Yep.
So that is geared around student outcomes.
Yes. And before getting to those SMART goals, you have to hear from the community and come up with the community values and guardrails to then develop those SMART goals. So, kind of looking at, I understand what you're saying, that we can't save everyone. The easy, which ones aren't we going to save? But if we're looking at, it's not that we're not going to focus or save these, but right now we're focusing on the percentage of free and reduced lunch students or this, that, or the other. We chip away at it a piece at a time and move forward rather than saying we're going to do every single goal out there, every single student and all of that. So again, I think there's a lot in there, and I think the thinking through this is good. Ultimately arriving at SMART goals for the board.
But we also don't want to rewrite our nice new strategic plan.
Well, so it fits perfectly, our thank you. And so like we have academics and programs as our first goal area. And right now it says, oh boy, now I'm drawing a blank, but we'll increase, provide high quality instruction to maximize student achievement. That's where a measurable goal could certainly go. Again, that's just a very broad statement of what we're trying to achieve in that. And now the board would say, here's what we want to see over that period of time as far as what academic achievement looks like. And each of the goal areas allow for a specific SMART goal at the board level tied to each one of those goal areas.
In the previous chapters that we read, didn't it say something that, like you should really focus on 3 goals, anything more than that was too many?
Yep. Yeah, and I think he even reiterated in one of the chapters, 3 to 5, you know. And so the same kind of concept, and we do this in school improvement and everything. We've got a laundry list of priority areas in any one of our goal areas. So let's narrow it down, and it's not that we're not doing anything in this area, but we're prioritizing this goal or this goal. And then if we get that up and running and the system's in place, then next year we can add another goal and so on. But it has to be manageable, all the way from the board level down to the classroom level. It has to be manageable, and you really can't manage more than 3 to 5 goals.
I think that's very wise, because one of the things that I always think about with these kinds of things is how to make it something the staff can actually do, because you don't want to demoralize them by asking them to do something that's impossible.
Yeah.
So I really feel like that's where the magic is for SMART goals for me, is that it gives staff something, down through administration, it gives them something to really focus on. They can say, okay, yeah, we can do that. And what I love about it is when you engage a staff like this, sometimes, as you're talking with them, because it's very smart to consult your staff as you're working on these things, a certain group might say to Dave, hey, you know what? Your board goal for us was too low last year. Aim higher, we can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Or, they might squawk and say, yeah, we're all going to die. We can't do this. But that's the great things. You engage staff, I think, differently sometimes when you do that.
And so I hear 2 things: that community engagement that he talks about, getting out and hearing to develop the values, the guardrails, and then the goals, so inclusive of staff, but also the broader community. And then I lost the second thought that was tied to that. It'll come back to me at some point. But
AJ, can you give me an example of what you say, a line in the sand? Who are we going to let fall through the cracks?
No, not who we're let.
Just give me,
No, you're mixing 2 things there. When I said a line in the sand, I meant saying, no, we're not providing this program because it takes away from the actual learning of the students.
So which program would you?
I
What, an
don't
example?
have one right off the top of my head.
If I can interject too, kind of going along with that, I think on page 100, my big aha from this chapter is the how about students having a positive learning experience is a means, not an end. If schools ensure that children go on field trips and are happy about their schooling, but the children don't actually learn anything, that is not a victory, that is malpractice. A wonderful culture and climate is an adult input, not a student outcome. It is necessary but insufficient, and it is neither why school systems exist or why school boards exist. And for me, like when you were talking, that's kind of what I was thinking of, some of those things that, like, obviously we want our schools to have a great community and a great culture, but sometimes that's personally what I fixate on with schools, like, the cutesy stuff or the fun things, or, and that's truly some of the things that might not really be, in some ways they do, they impact your outcomes because kids need to want to be at school, but it's some of those things I think, not necessarily cutting a program, but making sure that what's happening, the decisions we're making are actually about student outcomes, not necessarily slashing things constantly.
Yeah, that's. I knew that I wasn't articulating my thought clearly on that one, Sarah. It's the wrong time of the year to be having this conversation. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I just want to make it's a safe place too, so I just don't want you to feel like
Yeah.
you're being attacked. So I just want to
No, it's just too many hours and not enough thought time.
can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the big things that we're working on changing the adult behaviors with our strategic plan is starting with data. And, we have to have data that shows us that we need to do something, and we come up with a plan to do something, And then a big part of that plan, and I'll present on this next week as my mid-year progress report, part of our plans are, what is the data that we're going to monitor to see whether it's working or not? And even in stewardship, it's going to be a soft tie back to student outcomes, but we want all of our goal areas to be in some way tying back to student outcomes based on data. And so if we can't, again, with the idea of interim goals and progress monitoring, if we say this is the path we're taking and this is the data we're going to use to monitor it, and that data is telling us it's working, great. If that data is telling us it's not working, it's what are we going to do to get it working? And again, if we've set the path in the wrong direction and we realize that 2 or 3 interim checks down the road, then we course correct. But getting everyone to start with data, we talk a lot about, we know we need this because it'll help the students. There's not a mention of data in that. What is the data that's telling you that you need to do this? And what is the data? It should be the same data that you're now going to track to make sure that it's having a benefit.
Sarah, just one that I would pull out of my brain, art. If I'm not mistaken, the state checks that we have art, correct? Isn't that one of those requirements of that? I'm not even going to come close on the...
Yeah, I think you're referring to the, but I can't think, in my school data, the school quality index.
Yes,
to you.
yes,
Yeah.
That's the one where we're
So
dinged at the
media
high
centers,
school.
art, gym,
Yep.
Those kind of things.
So 2 years ago, we sat at Besser Gym. It was the first time I had seen NWEA results for it was math and English, and it was bad. I remember it was being very bad. And Eric Hansen and I both were, what are we going to do about this? And the general assessment was, we're doing everything we can. We can't, I believe Eric asked, well, can't we do something? We've got to catch these kids up. It was 3rd and 5th grade that were really taking it because of COVID years. And can we catch these kids up in any way? And the statement was, we have no time in the schedule for that. We're giving the max that we can give and still meet all our requirements. And that would be where I would say, pitch art. You throw another hour a week into this math thing. This is more important, the student outcome.
Yeah, I believe that'd be a community conversation, if
But-
we're following this process.
But in doing so, you're going to run afoul of the state and that building program, whatever you call it, and we're going to get dinged for it.
Yeah, I mean, yes, you would.
And that's kind of where my thought process was going with that. Does this make sense? Okay.
With what AJ's saying though, and then you said that we have to go to the community about that, then we're inputting the adult perspective, which is not putting the student outcome first, right? I mean, because that's the book keeps referring to that. We keep going back to the student. We're not looking for the adults. Like, we can see the problem. Math scores aren't high. Like, so we will do what it takes to get those math scores higher. So we don't go to the community for the adult opinion. We go to what the student outcome would be, right? I mean, that's...
Yeah, I mean, you want to do everything you can to improve student outcomes. But when you look at the so that's a how do we do things? And in one of the chapters, it talks about, why versus how. And so, is that a board decision to eliminate art or music or those sorts of things to do that? I would say no, not according to this, because that's a how we get it done, which he delegates to the superintendent. But if the community is clear that these are the guardrails that we protect, I don't know how you would want to structure it. But you would want to, if that is a SMART goal, the SMART goals are informed by the community input and hearing from people about what's valuable, what the guardrails are, and something like that, taking away art, all those sorts of things. As a professional educator, you're going to see a whole lot of backlash from the students themselves of, I can't go to art now, I can't go to gym, I can't go to library, I'm locked in a room with, math instruction until I get this right. Again, these are children. We'd want to have a bit more of a conversation about what that looks like. We currently do, when at the elementary level in particular, if a student needs enrichment, you really can't take them out of the general education in that area that they need enrichment or, intervention. So we often take away, we go into their recess time, or we go into their music time, we go into their art time and those sorts of things. But to just say we're getting rid of art until math scores come up, again, I think would be a community conversation of, does this meet our values and our guardrails?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's one of the interesting things about that discussion, in that, the community says, we agree with your APS mission statement. Alpena Public Schools, in partnership with our community, teaches and challenges all students to become lifelong learners and productive citizens. And if the community says, hey, that mission statement, that well-roundedness as a lifelong learner and as a productive citizen, we feel that's tied to art or music or whatever, then that becomes sort of one of those community guardrails. I think that's kind of interesting. And again, I'm not volunteering to have the board's hands tied and things that they feel they need to do by the end of this, but I do think it's okay to let this start to inform how we think about the use of our time and our goals. I think that's pretty fun.
To be clear, I don't think that we should get rid of any of those things, but
Yeah.
going back to
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
law, it just keeps going back to, it shouldn't matter what the community thinks. If we are a student-based outcome, that's what it, so
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to get,
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
not, I don't agree with that. However,
Yep, understood.
I didn't throw music under the bus, Eric.
He threw art.
I knew that would get nasty.
It was all hypothetical,
Yes.
Yep.
to clarify.
And I read the book. I am not an expert on this, so it is about the exchanging of thought here. So my voice doesn't raise, or rate any higher. It is kind of interesting to walk through these examples. Again, kind of moving to his guardrails of hearing from the community and expressing these guardrails and things not to do. And that's why I kind of thought, well, maybe the community feels that we should not, limit art, music, those kind of things, versus saying, do this, do that, which is much more difficult for the superintendent and administration to do when it's, it's restrictive, I think, or less free in how it's phrased.
That was all I had out of chapter 5.
Okay.
Chapter 6.
Well, I think we've touched on a couple of them. Chapter 6 is the, where did the what is our why? It was why 4?
Y was number 5.
Five was what is our why? Six
Okay,
is
6 is representing the community, so. I'm not sure where we were in 6 or 7 and 8, but this idea of, the community being, or the board reaching out to the community.
The discussion of Mrs. Johnson, I thought, was kind of fun. And, I was thinking, well, what if Mrs. Johnson came to the board and said, improve student scores in STEM? That would be, okay, well, so one member of our community believes that. Well, it could also be, that we're coming into an age where many STEM positions are going to be eliminated by AI. Who knows? So you have to look, what's the underlying value? Is the underlying value, make sure that our students are employable? Is that a community value? And if it were, then you would address maybe what's that deeper community value by discussing, things with people. I mean, you can do it in a lot of ways, but I thought that was kind of interesting, finding what's that underlying value and how do you use that, instead of some kind of more direct or obvious consensus. I thought that was an interesting discussion.
And I think, is that the same chapter where, you're faced with people coming to you with tasks or, priorities? And so what's the value versus the actual thing that they're asking for, to then guide the responses?
I thought some of this is just good for self-reflecting, as a reminder of. Good for self-reflecting as, some of the reminders of, you kind of hear from the same people sometimes, or, the same group of a community, and how do you make sure that you honor, the whole community and not just the few community members who have your ear type of thing, so.
I would say I have a, let me think about that a second. It's interesting, the people that that you come into contact with that aren't necessarily here, but that say, I like what you're doing, or I don't like what you're doing. There's more of a cross-section out there than what you realize quite often. And I have a relatively small circle. I don't go out to town much. But just say I didn't say anything. I'll leave my thoughts alone now.
Well, is that leading into the community engagement by the board and I don't know if he calls them listening sessions or what the term is, but.
Yeah, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to say something I shouldn't. I did think that if we go into that community engagement, it's going to take a heap of work to get that, because we're not going to get the people. Look how much effort you had to put into the strategic planning.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that by our election, in a way, the community has spoken, in a way, because I don't think that anybody is surprised by where I stand on a variety of issues. I think that is very, very clear before I was elected.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, I think we have a sense of what the community values. Putting it down into 3 goals and 10 guardrails, I think that would take some distilling. Did I skip ahead on you, Dave?
No, I maybe, but I think, we've already talked about the SMART goals, and I think that's a really important point, because you've spoken about that before, Eric, that the community has, selected you to come and represent, and what does that mean? Do you need to hear from all of the community? I guess I'd just be interested in talking about that more. because you are here and representing all students, in order to set those SMART goals, according to what he's saying, needs to be informed on community input. And so how do we balance that? How do we reconcile that?
Maybe look, a collective look at the community values and visions, and then look for like a common thread in those, in all of the community input into the school system, and look for common issues, maybe a common thread that we could that we could act on, or make a goal or a SMART goal or a guardrail or something like that. That would, you're not going to please everybody, but maybe we could find a common ground.
Can you give me a little expansion on that, Sarah, just for my mind?
Just what the community, work to listen to the different leaders in the community and respect them as a whole, but not everybody's going to agree on everything, but maybe we could find a common thread, a common goal for, to be productive in improving student outcomes.
Okay.
So that we could, find some common ground.
I like the idea of the listening sessions. Having tried to host listening sessions, I had one participant. Thank you.
It was a good cinnamon roll.
Yeah. It is challenging, and he makes the point. Like you said, we're not going to get the full community representation here. And so we try to find a way to go out and be in the community. And I think he mentioned, finding people to host those sessions where a couple of board members can go, rather than, putting the onus on us to schedule a night with the board, because I've done that many times with myself. The superintendent sat there and nobody comes. But I don't know, maybe if an organization has a meeting or something and they have a moment to have a board member come, or two board members, and do those listening sessions. Again, it's already scheduled with a different organization, a different group of the community that we may or may not be familiar with. But then taking that all back and creating, I think he said, a 5-page summary of the listening, to then use that as our guiding document. Not guiding, but a reference document for as we set the goals for the district.
I would be a little hesitant by using only the listening sessions to discount what we learn, being elected to these positions. I think we mustn't discount that, because, that's a really huge factor. But I think the listening sessions would be interesting. I would certainly like to participate in that sort of thing, because I think anytime you expand your understanding of your community, that's only a good thing. I was going to make another point kind of based on that earlier, but then it was my turn to have it fly away. But anyway.
Yeah.
I think like an example of what AJ is saying is for the rain garden. I wasn't kidding when I talked to 100 different people, and 2 of them told me that they really wanted it, but yet none of them showed up to say that they didn't want the rain garden. I wasn't kidding. I talked to so many different people in the community, and so there are people who don't speak up on things that they actually want. If that's a good example of so many people told me no, but yet nobody came to tell us in person no. If that
Well, I think that's an excellent point, because, there are certain subjects that people won't speak publicly about. When if you have the wrong opinion on, something to do with gender, and your business is targeted for boycotts and other action like that, you're not going to come and tell anyone publicly what you think. So again, that's where some of those private conversations that we have, when we're campaigning or just out in the community, that's why I wouldn't want to ever discount those, even though, the listening sessions could be quite productive and interesting.
Yeah. And I think that's looking for that common theme. So we all go out and conduct these, or you all go out and conduct these listening sessions and bring that information back and, review it and see what's in common and what's not. And obviously you have a say on the values and guardrails of the community as well. But I think having that piece of data would be very helpful for us all to work from versus these stories of, this is happening, this, that's not in the goal of setting those SMART goals or in that process.
I just think it's hard to talk to a community as like a whole, like you see that's the
Sorry,
problem.
it's hard to talk to.
Like a community as a whole, like you just don't
Oh, yeah.
hear, from everyone. And,
Yep. Yep.
But I'm interested in talking to people, so yeah, I'd be open to that.
So I think I hear a common consensus that we would like to do this, listening, outreach, whatever you want to call it. How and where and who, I think, I guess, how do we keep this on the forefront? Should we put it on an agenda to discuss?
Yeah, so,
I'm trying to make it happen, I guess.
yeah, then the next part, obviously, is that the superintendent, again, according to the book, brings a data profile as well. So while the board is doing listening, I'm compiling the data, the student achievement data and any other data. And again, this is towards building those SMART goals, those values, those guardrails. So we bring those together. That is the work of the strategic plan. We've already got it scheduled that in September, you're going to receive a student achievement data update from the district. Might not be September, but that's part of our process. Because in my mind, once we all agree on the baseline data of where we are, then you can talk about your goals at the board level. Again, having that community input, the listening sessions as well. So as part of the strategic plan, that's mapped out, and we'll go into that a little bit more next month or next week.
You missed what I was looking for, Dave. I'm saying we've got this idea. It seems like we all like this idea. How do we make what we just talked about happen?
Yeah.
I think in Dave's comment there was sort of this understanding that we're not really done with the book yet, but we have some of this stuff sort of planned out as there's a mechanism in a way for some of these things to start to happen. I guess personally I'm not in like completely hot blocks to immediately set up sessions like this, but to the extent that we fit it into an existing strategic plan, it's kind of what I'm hearing from Dave, is that we won't let it drop, I think, right? That's kind of my understanding.
Yeah,
That's what you were-
and as far as the who and what, we can send emails out to organizations, we can do all of that, and we've done that in the past where you've provided names of organizations that I was going to go speak at or to send invitations. So, it's pretty ready to go.
Okay, I just was, a lot of times you get into a discussion and then it just fades away.
Yeah.
It was a good idea then, and then,
Well, I think we need more of the strategic plan
Yeah.
to be kind of like.
Yes, and so next week I am presenting on the progress on the goals, the strategic plan, and I can go into a lot more detail of what we've got planned on the strategic plan side of it, and you'll see how some of these things can fit into that process.
okay.
Yeah, and maybe once we look at the strategic plan and the different pillars, it would help us brainstorm different organizations or, that might fall under when we look at like the mental health or that portion of the pillar. It might, we might come up with some good ideas on community engagement to listen when it comes to that pillar, and so just like a broad community gathering where there's no clear focus, if we're focused on that pillar of the strategic plan.
Yeah. And now that you made that connection, it is community engagement, and our administrative liaison is Lee, so I'll make him schedule all those things and get that on the calendar.
One of the perks of the job, right?
Yeah, delegation. So I think that's kind of the community's visions and goals chapter and values and guardrails.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff with SMART goal setting, and I know Eric Hansen would be chiming in if he were here right now, because that
Yeah.
is, his talking point since he joined the board is our lack of SMART goals, so.
Yep. And I would just like to emphasize, the examples given are multiple year goals with interim goals built in, but ultimately that highest level goal is going to be a multi-year goal of, with checkpoints along the way.
I did kind of chuckle about that one, considering that most board people, it's what, 4-year life expectancy?
Make them 5-year goals.
5-year goal. We don't like that goal anymore, throw it out, okay, get a new one.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously, we don't want to do that. And so we set a reasonable interim goal pathway to keep checking in on that. And again, that's built into our strategic plan where we've got NWEA is administered 3 times a year. When we get to our common assessment system being up and running at all grade levels, all content areas, we'll be able to check in, at the classroom level, daily, weekly, but at the grade level, content level, quarterly, semester-wise, and we'll have multiple checkpoints built into that system. Did we start the clock? 45 minutes? All right. We got to wrap it up in 15 minutes. It'd be an hour at that point. So, board work versus superintendent work. I was a little confused. I'd need a lot more clarification on what he's saying here. Because essentially he said if it's board work, it's directly in line with the guardrails. And if it's not, it's superintendent work. To me, that's confusing. Because if you have I guess I would need to see some guardrails. But if your value is raising student achievement, isn't everything, including the how of we do all of that, directly in line with the value? And he makes the point earlier that the board should be focused on the why, not the how. So I was a little bit not real clear on his distinctions there.
I did like his example of the guardrails with the Bill of Rights and the 10 Commandments. That kind of clarified for me. I dropped back a chapter on you. Sorry, Dave.
That's right. But it was phrased as thou shalt not and will not create,
Yeah.
versus do this, which is restrictive.
Yeah. I guess I kind of, when he threw that out there, I put another notch up for the Founding Fathers. Wow. They were ahead of the curve on this one. But I think it would be, I didn't know how to correlate the guardrails enough to give a straight direction to you. I think that would be challenging for me for us to get the goal, to get the guardrail, or the 10 of them, whatever it was, to direct you. That seems like a little bit more intellectual than I am. We'll give it to you, Eric.
Actually, sometimes guardrails can be really, really specific. Like, you can say to executive director, type person or superintendent, you can say something really simple like, you can spend up to $20,000 on this sort of expense without coming to the board. But if it's over that, then you have to come to the board. So there's a guardrail. Or you can never let the equity in a particular fund dip below a certain number. That's a very specific thing that you can do. So some of these, I think, are not the guardrails. They don't have to be lofty, vague, or overly intellectualized concepts. They can be really firm. Or it could be tied to student achievement. Scores on the NWEA in such an area shall not dip below such and such. There could be all kinds of things. That way you you give the, I think that the concept behind that, and I'm getting that from the book, is that it increases the creativity of your CEO in finding solutions that, the board might not necessarily think of. I think that's a good dynamic. I mean, I don't have sort of the same phobia this fellow has about directives, but I think that on the whole, that's a good way to interact with your CEO person.
And he mentioned the ability to pivot.
Yes,
If the
right.
guardrail is written properly, then it allows that creativity or,
Right.
yeah.
I like what they say on page 131. At the core, guardrails are written the way that they are allowed the board to protect the values of the community while allowing maximum freedom for educators to serve the unique needs of the students, to help provide for student outcomes.
Yeah. Well, and I'd written down, so he started that chapter with the example of the board making the decision to change the funding formula for different schools. And that's basically focusing on the how versus the why, and does it fall directly in line with their goals and guardrails? And so if not, delegate it to the superintendent. And he tied that back to the customer versus the owner. That funding formula would be customer thinking because it serves those particular customers, but it doesn't look at the overall picture of the long-term, finances, program offerings, those kind of things.
I guess make sure I'm in the right chapter here. So, I did think it was good that on page 144, he lists out the distinctions and why it was important to put that where it belonged. The only argument I would have with him on it was that generally if somebody is coming to a board person, it's because they already went through a little bit of the process and didn't get the answer they were looking for. And sometimes the person at the counter of the sandwich shop is tired of dealing with the same person or, the same complaint that the sandwiches aren't up to code. And so and then the person says, all right, I'm going up a level. So that was my only complaint with his laying that out, is that
Yeah.
that should be where you start, but sometimes you get human attitude in there.
Yeah. And we do have a policy that clarifies, if you're not satisfied after working with so-and-so, this is how you move it to that next level and so on. So, but I did find those distinctions on page 144 pretty clarifying.
And I did like the analogy of the sandwich shop. Like,
Yeah.
well, that puts a little perspective on it.
Yeah. Yep.
I liked as it went on kind of from there, just the, kind of thinking sometimes when we get emails as a board and just the, the gratitude, the listening, because sometimes they come to us because they haven't gotten the answers, and sometimes they just want the board to know, like, these are some struggles and they want to be heard and, to feel, that they've connected with the board. And so I just like some of the, kind of the talking points about interacting with the community and being connected and just knowing that people like to be heard, and it's important to listen. And
to that point, Anna, I gotta compliment you on your emails to people. Even when they are ready to draw and quarter us, I think you have been doing an excellent job of saying, we hear you, we appreciate you're taking the time to do this. So,
Well,
mark to
thank
you on that one.
It's hard because I don't want to, typically respond because my thoughts might not be the same as everyone sitting around this table, but I do appreciate that people are engaged, and I
Yeah.
like the thought about, also, it's important that community members know that you're, to add in something in there about, the board can say something similar to the response about the superintendent will connect with you once it's sorted out. If you feel like something is missing in our policies that might have better address this situation, please come back and address this again. Like, kind of giving them, best we can do is policy change. If we're, missing the mark on something here, let us know, but otherwise it's important to be heard, and not simply just, brushing them off and saying, have you,
Hands are tied, sorry.
Hands are tied.
Move on.
15, okay. Any final thoughts on these chapters? I appreciate the discussion. Our timing is just a little bit off.
Can we take it out of next session?
Well, I meant the timing of the chapters and the actions, but yeah, we can take it out of the next section. So, chapter 10 is understanding assessments, formative and summative and all of that. That's really good. But then chapter 12 is evaluating board performance, and so we'll be discussing, actually it'll line up with our July workshop as we're, I think, getting the results back from our board evaluation process as well. So it'll kind of line up in that regard, and then evaluating superintendent and the most valuable resource. I think those are the next chapters. So with that, we can close this and get
Move on to the construction update.
construction. Yeah, so if you haven't driven by the high school, I strongly encourage you to do. They're working on all sides. Site work outside is moving along quite well. Front and back is torn up, and that's proceeding. And then they are in the office, the main office. It's all blocked off, and they're demolishing that. And then also working on the what will become the student entrance, which is in the small commons, I think it was used to be called, the senior lounge small. So they are on schedule right now, and things are going well. That's it.
Yeah, I happened to pop into the high school probably 5 minutes after the final dismissal bell on that Wednesday to deal with a parenting issue, and yeah, they were wasting no time.
Yeah, they said they were following the students with the yellow tape.
Yeah, it
and,
was
blocking it all off,
construction
so.
zone. Mhm.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to the Michigan High School Athletic Association membership resolution.
And you have a blank copy of that in your packet. This is an annual resolution, and so you're essentially signing on that we would be participating in MHSAA. They run the tournaments, and so in order to do that, we would pass this resolution. And then also you get, so it's postseason tournaments and benefit from MHSAA services, including the $1 million accidental insurance policy and concussion care gap insurance that comes with that. So it has to be approved and returned to them by August 1st. And so they have the last year's. So it'll just be updated. We do offer sports in 6th through 8th and at the high school as well.
The handbook they mention on the first page, is that's their handbook?
I
I
believe.
feel like aren't there a couple pages in our handbook that
Reference it.
reference their
Yeah.
handbook or is included in our handbook?
Is there a link anywhere to that?
I can get it for you.
Oh, yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, maybe that could go, just a link to that, so we could take a peek this week. Thanks.
Will you throw it in the board update, Dave, or?
Yep.
Maybe I'll click on it?
How much does it cost to join?
Mary.
I couldn't see it on there anywhere.
Yeah. It is, don't quote me on it, it's possible that the revenue comes through, because they get the revenue from the postseason tournament ticket sales,
I was mostly just curious.
so that might be it. I'll check to see, but I don't know that we pay a membership fee. But that is one reason why when you go to playoffs, they only do the digital payment now. MHSA switched that over. So if you remember, I think 2 years ago, we went to digital and received feedback from the community. They wanted to go back to a cash option. So we switched back to a cash option, and then the playoffs became digital only. It's because the playoffs are not our playoffs, they're MHSAA playoffs. But I will see about the handbook and the fee.
It's free.
Is it? Hey, thanks, Diane.
I was Googling.
Hey,
I
all
was
right.
looking back through our old,
But if we don't accept this, then we can't participate in any type of tournaments or state playoffs or anything like that.
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
You couldn't do districts, regionals, states, things
Yeah.
like that.
All right.
Anyone have any other questions other than getting the link and double checking the cost? So. Okay. Board of Education meeting calendar?
And so the update Mary was mentioning is the June meeting of 26. That last one would be on the 29th, not the date listed there. Because again, for budgeting purposes, we want to push it as close as possible to the end of the year. But we would, you don't have to officially approve this. If these are dates work for everyone, then we would just adopt the calendar and put it into action.
What's the board meeting, retreat in October? Is it gonna be fun? Is there gonna be
No,
snacks?
it's
No.
not fun.
No snacks?
You know, I got to
feel
tell
like
you,
our last
as the
one
person that
was-
organizes and plans those,
I
I find
require
them
snacks.
fascinating. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we do.
Sarah, my first year, I thought retreat sounded.
Well, I
Yeah.
learned from the
Team
last
bonding,
one.
rah, rah.
Yeah, this is what we got
That
from the
is
last one.
not my
This was the worst
fault.
retreat ever.
You know, we
Sorry.
can't go
was
to
interesting.
exotic locations for our retreats and things like that. It's just a name of a meeting.
You can at
So,
least bring treats.
I think we usually do have dinner.
Yeah.
Except for Dr. Lawson because it usually has gluten in it, so.
Yeah. But there's the retreat, and then what's the other one called? The annual meeting. Basically, it's just time for us to focus on a particular topic, or, yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
feel like before
It's a
we've done
misnomer.
board training.
Mhm.
Yeah, just,
Yeah.
I think when the new superintendent tool came out, and speaking of which, did you get signed up for one?
Yep.
Okay. When it came out and all of us had to get it, like we did it at that, so.
And last year, we used the strategic plan, things like that, so.
Yeah. Just an extra meeting.
All right, that's it for me.
Okay.
And then just the board evaluation.
Oh, yeah, board evaluation, so I've got an email ready to send out for us to do. It's just through MASB, it just comes to the 7 of us, and once I activate the link, I don't get the results, they just go to an online portal, whatever, through MASB, but it's only open for 2 weeks once I send out the link and it's activated, so the goal then would be to have it done in 2 weeks, right? You didn't have, there's nothing, obviously, for next week, whether we add it to the agenda, July's agenda or the meeting, we can kind of decide from there. And I don't remember if you recall, we did this last year, and they just send back an email with, pie charts to show where you're strong, where the board can do work, and kind of guide us in a direction of how to improve, and maybe tie it into some of our board goals and stuff too, so.
Are you thinking of sending it out this week?
I've got it already ready in my draft, so I can send it out. It'll just trigger the 2 weeks, so if anyone's worried about not getting it done, let's see, today's Monday, June 23rd, so it would take us through July 7th, so, which is,
And it's probably, what do you think, 30 questions?
yeah, I mean, it takes under 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just all. So, are you good, Eric, if I send it out tonight or tomorrow? Okay, that's a 2-week window is okay for you. Okay. Thank you. So, that's really it for me. And the reason, one of the reasons we do this, we do have a board policy that states that we self-evaluate ourselves. So, we had not done it in many, many years, and we had an old form that we were using, and kind of came across this as something maybe a little bit more up to date and easier to go through, and then I don't get individual results. We just get back a full spreadsheet that shows everyone as a whole and not individual, so.
And I did reference it in my retreat. Put it next to our strategic plan goals and the chapters from the book. It's nice little bar graphs and everything.
Nice progress, okay.
So if that isn't worth the price of admission, I don't know what is.
Charitable gifts,
Yes, there are many.
all good on those.
Oh, yeah, well, we'll go
Yep.
through those on, was it next Monday?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We get to look at each other every.
Okay, citizens or delegations who would like to address the board? Okay. Information and questions from board members?
Nope,
Okay.
I'm good.
I did, as we said, the pledge. The Exchange Club hosted an event I think it was last week, where they donated a new American flag to all of the schools in the district, and ACC and Emmanuel, All Saints, and Pied Piper. And then they went through the pledge and how to say it properly, how to stand properly, and address and everything. And then they pointed out there is no comma between one nation and under God. And it is actually, and we always naturally, one nation, pause, under God. And so we said it properly after that, one nation under God. And it was really difficult to do because it was so
I remember
ingrained
learning that
to
in
pause.
Girl Scouts as a kid, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure every time we say the pledge, I think of that. Because
Yeah.
I remember learning one nation
Yeah.
under God, and there are no commas.
there is
One
no
nation
comma
under
there,
God. It's
so.
one nation under God. But
I just thought of it as we were saying the pledge today, so now you know.
we all
Yeah.
paused, yeah.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, advanced planning, June 30th, back here for our meeting at 5:30. Also on the agenda is the budget hearing meeting, and July 14th workshop, July 28th organizational meeting. And with that, we can adjourn.
All right.